Good morning, good morning, good morning. I think those are the first words I've spoken because I can tell based on how I'm listening to my voice for the first time. There we go. As you can see, I'm in my Unk attire today. And I got my mad scientist hair going on. That's alright. We're changing that sometime soon. But yeah, I think I just woke up this morning wanting to take this walk. I'm still in recovery from my accident last month. It's hard to believe it's been a month already. And it's been very challenging in a lot of ways that I didn't think it would be challenging. Of course, there's the physical aspect of it all, of like not being able to do certain things I used to do, but then there's also this aspect of like grief. I think I talked a little bit about grief last time, but I think what I want to do is today maybe just muse about grief and oh hey squirrel, grief and presence. I think the two probably have some sort of association, and maybe I can find a connecting line. Maybe I can't. Maybe I just want to talk about my thoughts regarding each of them, as they are two components that have been very integral to recovery. So I think I'll start with grief. Like I mentioned, it's been hard. One day I woke up and I was able to run, dance, move, drive, breathe, laugh, cough, sneeze with zero issues, zero problems. And then the accident happens, and then the next day, those activities are either inaccessible to me or they can only be done in the presence of pain, which kind of makes you not want to do them. It's also like your body signaling to you not to do them. And that was one instance of grief. I think there have been a lot of moments when I've been attempting to do something, and only by attempting it do I realize my limitation. And there is this feeling of disconnect when my limitation is something that I didn't set for myself, or is something that like I was once able to do no problems. So for example, like the first time I drove, it was only 10-minute drive max, and it wasn't on a highway or any major roads or anything like that. But the first time I drove, I just burst into tears, and it wasn't because I was having trauma about being in a car again. It was the fact that like driving caused pain. To experience a sensation that I had never experienced before while driving was a really shocking reality, and I had to all of a sudden grieve that my body has changed. The same thing happened in physical therapy when I went to the physical therapist for the first time, and they asked me to like just do some what I would consider, before this, like very simple exercises, just rocking legs back and forth, pulling like a resistance band. And of course in my head I was just like, yeah, I can do that, no problem. And then when I actually did it, I realized like, no, I can do this, but there's also pain present here. And those moments where again I'm recognizing my limitations and knowing that like my limit that was once set here has been pulled back because of something that happened to me, I am now trying to figure out how to understand and grapple with the space between what I used to do and what I lost. And that's where that grief comes from, right? It comes from like the acknowledgement of losing something, whether it's ability, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a job. Anytime that we experience loss, we are probably like preconditioned to follow like a period of grief. And I think that that space is so important, because if I never have time to kind of like ruminate and think and cry and feel about what I had lost, it's gonna come up at another time and it's not gonna be good. One. Two, it never really allows us to like come to terms with what happened. And also, like, grief isn't so cut and dry. It isn't so tactical as people like to think it is, that like you can just put a period of time on it, like, oh, this is 6 weeks, like you got 6 weeks of grieving, that then you should be ready to go. Like, grief doesn't work like that. It will probably pop up at different times in my life. Like, I lost one of my cousins in 2017, and I still grieve her loss at different intervals in my life, where I become cognizant of what I have. I'm cognizant also of what I've lost, and I have to reconcile with that gap between what I had and what I lost by grieving. So there's been a lot of grief about what is lost, and no matter what we do, we're going to lose things in our lives. We're going to lose attachment to our body. We're going to lose connections to people. We might move a different place and we have to grieve that as well. But so much of Western American culture, which is driven a lot by capitalism, is, I just love how these have grown so much over the last season. I remember where they were just little buds. But so much of our system is dependent upon us not grieving, because grief requires time away from activity and labor, which is counterproductive to a production based industry and country. So it makes sense why we want to compartmentalize grief, or we want to brush it aside. And especially those who have been raised as men and conditioned as men, like, one, we're already told like emotions are a weakness and a vulnerability. And then two, when we're supposed to grieve, we're supposed to just grit it out instead. Like, without, if you just try and grit through everything instead of grieve, you're in for an eventual like breakdown. And that's inevitable, because it's just like a bottle of soda that you just keep shaking up and shaking up and shaking up. And then one day, whether you know it or not, like, all it takes is the little twist of that top and it's just gonna boom, burst everywhere. And then you're left with like nothing. So I think that we need more time to grieve. That's just it. We just need more time to acknowledge loss. And we need to be able to face loss as opposed to hiding it away. I think that that's a thing that can also be taught to us, is that, like, we just put it away. And where do we put it? And why are we putting it away? Why is it better, if at all, for us to grieve? Ooh, let's take a new path. Wait, does this take me to where I need to go? No, I don't think so. So, grieving is tough. It does require you to be vulnerable, whether that's vulnerability with yourself, with somebody who's licensed to deal with grief, somebody who's unlicensed but has expertise in certain practices that help with grief, or with your family, friends, strangers, acquaintances. Like, grief, I don't think it may be done internally, but I don't think it's an individual act. Something that I'm reflecting on now that I think about that too is, like, when I was grieving like my ability in my body, I shared my story with a friend of mine, and I asked them if they had any experience with like navigating a temporary or permanent disability. And when they shared their story, we then started to ask, like, why is it that humans want to find like company within their misery? And it's because I think that we get a sense of like togetherness. Like, I don't feel so alone in my situation when I've heard from other people that they were in similar situations and what they had to feel and experience and go through to get to that point of like acceptance. So that's, but again, we're told not to, especially as men, we're told not to talk about these things with other men. So it's hard for men to just wrap their heads around sharing their truth and sharing and grief with each other. But yet, like, for me and my friend to have this moment, oh my gosh, look at this little turtle. What are you doing here, buddy? Hold on. Oh, it's so precious. You are alive. Okay, cool. That's it. I'm gonna leave you be. Cute. It's probably a way to tie in the shell of a turtle with grief. But yeah, like the idea that we're told to not share in these things just further allows those things to pile up. And then the thing about it is that like the system, job, labor system, productive system, does not care about an individual as they think they do, because that individual can always be replaced. No matter if they're a general or a specialist, like they can always be replaced. So of course they're gonna say like, oh, if you can't get back to work at XYZ, like we're just gonna fill in another body with that. And that's tough because then like once again we have to make this difficult choice between, do I grieve what I grieve, or do I put it away and get back to work so I can just like maintain basic survival in today's times? Really tough choice, but I think it goes back to the second topic I'd like to talk about, which is presence. Like, how often are we present in our days? How often are we able to like just be? Not have to do, not have to think about something ahead or think about something behind. Like, yes, I understand that being a human being is like this strange matter of like past, present, and future all like intersecting in one. So it's kind of hard not to be in three times at once. And yet, like, how do we just encourage ourselves to like be embodied? To look around and try and merge ourselves with the elements that are right around us as opposed to the elements that'll be ahead or the elements that are behind us, which are all relevant and true, but like presence. We're living in a world full of distraction. And not everything that we see is a distraction. I won't go to say like all of social media is distraction. No, because we can find some really amazing stuff from up there. But what I do think is that if there's an overload of what we're exposed to and we're not able to like make sense or take away something tangible from it, then it can become, even the greatest thing can become a distraction. Or if we're supposed to be like trying to remain present but are constantly being pulled into something else that we don't actually choose for ourselves, that is chosen for us by, I don't know, an algorithm, then yes, that's a distraction. And it's hard not to be distracted. Even I get distracted. I mean, of course I get distracted. And it can be good at times. It can give us like a breather from what we're focusing on, and can kind of give our minds a chance to like relapse and relax. And that's not always something that we have access to, but it can also be something that's very essential to our like day-to-day living. And yet, like, if we have an abundance of distraction, then yeah, it does start to like, shape and take away from things. But you would ask yourself, well, isn't distraction like counterproductive to production? Yes, but what I think the loophole is, and that our system tries to use, is that you can't get distracted at work. There are rules set up by companies and jobs and employment that will actively try to mitigate how much distraction you are exposed to. No phones in the office. Okay, don't get on any websites. No books. Try to get your work done. Like, they create a condition and an environment where they get to control how much access to distraction you have, or they attempt to. Because again, you're still going to find ways to like go around it, but most of the time you're not. So they have a means to control the environment that limits distraction. But then when you get back out into your house, that's when you get flooded with the distractions. That's when you have the chance to see all the things. And then instead of, thinking about ways of, I won't even go as far as to say self-improvement. I would think of ways of just saying, like, instead of like finding a way to be yourself and be in you and think and dabble and dream and reflect, let's just give you distractions. Because if we give you chances and time to do all that thinking and ruminating, you might start thinking like, how can you do something different? And I don't need you, as your boss, I don't need you to think about doing something different. I need you to think about getting ready for the next day where you get to do what I need you to do. So that's how distraction works. It's not fun. Because it keeps us in a cycle of do your production at home or do your production at work, no distractions there, then come home, be overstimulated by distractions that prevents you from thinking anything else. Then by the time you go to sleep, you go right back into the cycle again. So like, oh my god, this fucking bug is excited to hang out with me. Shit flying in my mouth. So that's what I think about distractions. And once again, to bring this all to a close, distraction is an enemy of grief, because grief requires presence and time to just like sit and process, remember? But distraction is a temporary escape from that. So like, it's easy for distraction to get into the way of the grieving process. And sometimes you do need to be distracted from the grieving process. Sometimes it can be overbearing and you need to just like have a minute. But like, if you're constantly being distracted and you have little time for the grief, then you never have time to get over what it is. And then that just in turn desensitizes you. And that is what they want. They want this. They want desensitized workers who don't question, who don't speak up. They just want you to do what you are come to do. No thinking, no feeling, just labor. Just labor. But instead, I really encourage you, listener, me, whoever, to grieve. And to grieve unashamed. Like, let it out. No matter where you are, what you're doing, as long as you're safe, Oh, look at the little baby frogs. There's just so much nature out here today. Just let that grief out. Because if not, it ain't never going to be good for you. But if you do it, I promise you it will lead you to a better understanding and acceptance of who you are.